Good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Gita Sabhawaral, the United Nations Resident Coordinator in Thailand. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this breakout session of the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit 2021 on Southeast Asia's net zero transformation for agriculture and food sector, which I will be moderating today. Southeast Asia is a major food and agriculture producer, which in turn contributes a substantial portion to the regional economy. At the country level, agriculture contributes to between 10 and 30% of GDP and employs nearly over a third of the labor force. Across the region, however, farm sizes relatively small and are continuing to decrease, with the sector generating the slowest growth and lowest productivity per worker relative to other areas of the economy. In addition to the regional issues, food and agricultural industries are facing critical challenges worldwide. Climate-related uncertainties are increasing, with fluctuating temperatures contributing to the increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events such as droughts and floods. These pose considerable risks to agriculture and food systems, as well as small farmer livelihoods. At the same time, as you are aware, the sector is responsible for more than a third of greenhouse gas emissions. Addressing these complex, interconnected economic, environmental, and developmental challenges is critical to advance the Sustainable Development Goals in the region and the world. This will only be possible with the transformation towards climate-smart agriculture to sustainably increase agricultural productivity and farmer income, while also adapting and building resilience to climate change and reducing greenhouse gases. In this sector, the UN, as you may be aware, is prioritizing technical assistance in three broad areas. First, scaling up climate-smart farming practices and technologies for production system through application of ICT for agriculture, intercropping, amongst other areas. Secondly, producing agricultural statistics through the use of satellite and drone imagery, open software and tablet-based data collection for indicators that are largely related to SDG 2 on zero hunger and SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. And thirdly, through South-South and triangular cooperation to support countries in Southeast Asia to produce georeference data and maps based on agricultural services, where we are able to analyze where farmers are relative to markets and transport networks, and thereby helping to increase resilience and productivity while reducing costs. These efforts are integrated into a broader global initiative. In September, the UN Secretary General will convene the 2021 Food Systems Summit to help chart a new course towards healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable food systems. Let me thank the CP Group for hosting today's breakout session as part of the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit 2021. As we move forward today, we have 6 distinguished guests to share their insights and perspectives on the subject. This is an opportunity to explore how we, from different sectors and areas of expertise, can work together in accelerating collective action towards transformation in the agriculture and food sector. I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce our forward-thinking partners on the panel today. We will kickstart the session with a regional overview of the climate situation in food and agriculture provided by Mr. DAMEN, a climate change expert with the FAO Regional Office for the Asia Pacific. Then we will look at the climate policy context for Thailand, guided by Dr. KOLLAWAT SAKHAKARA from Thailand's Office of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy and Planning. Third, we will examine the role of the Thai private sector in improving climate resilience. Mr. KIATCHAI MAITRIWONG, Executive Director of the Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, will discuss the role that TGO is playing to support the private sector. Next, we will delve deeper into the low emission cultivation of rice. As Director of Operations, Mr. Ole Henriksson will tell us about the Thai rice nationally appropriate mitigation action program. And then we will look at technology-based solutions with Mr. Sunny Varghese, co-founder and group CEO of Olam International Limited, who will talk about technological solutions that support sustainable food and agriculture. And finally, we have from the CP Group, Mr. Noppandan Dedudon, Chief Sustainability Officer, who will share experiences from the private sector on achieving net zero targets. So let's start with Mr. Damon from the FAO Regional Office for the Asia Pacific. As you're currently leading FAO's regional program on climate transparency, climate smart, resilient agriculture, and inclusive and sustainable rice landscapes, please provide a regional overview. What is Southeast Asia's picture of the situation and efforts relating to climate action in the food and agriculture sector? Over to you, Bo Damon.
Thanks very much, Gita, for that kind introduction. Yes, what I would like to do now is to provide some context to the discussion today and to talk about the food system in Southeast Asia, about efforts to transform the food system into something that's more sustainable and the reasons why that is important, and how that may be useful as the basis for a net zero transformation here in Thailand and in the region. Just at the outset, I think it's important to keep in mind, as when we're talking about a food system, we're thinking about the outcomes of the food system itself, which can include things like nutrition and food security, societal drivers that influence priorities within food systems, including policy and cultural norms. We also can think about the core food system itself, the production system, the distribution system, how food gets on our plate. And then we can also think about the natural environment, including the biosphere and also the atmosphere. And the food system doesn't work in isolation. All of these components interact together within the agriculture sector and then with other sectors like trade and health. And we have to think about a sustainable food system as a system that is delivering food security and nutrition for all, and that won't compromise the ability of future generations to achieve food security and nutrition as well. And I think that this is ultimately also what a net zero transformation is targeting as well, something that's more sustainable for future generations. Now, why is that important in the Southeast Asia context? Well, if we were to start with outcomes, at the regional level, Southeast Asia has made tremendous progress over the last few decades in terms of addressing food insecurity. And a lot of this change, a lot of this impressive progress that's sort of outlined here on this graph has been to do with investment in the agriculture sector. And we're talking about investment in things like more resilient, adapted seeds and crop varieties. We've been talking about investment in irrigation infrastructure. And this has delivered significant benefits in terms of food security. Also in the broader economy, what we've seen is a transition out of agriculture to an extent into other sectors. And you can see here in this graph that the share of the agriculture sector in terms of GDP and employment has declined in countries around the region over the past few decades. And that reflects the fact that there has been an outflow of rural labor into urban areas, into other sectors of the economy, which has driven a broad-based economic expansion, which has really been the basis for a lot of the regional achievements in terms of improved food security. Now, what does that mean for the farm sector itself? I think there's two important things here. We need to reflect on the role that urbanization and growth outside of the farm sector has done in terms of creating the basis for improved outcomes in terms of food security. But also that flow of labor outside of agriculture has also created some issues in terms of the capacity of farmers in the region, their human capacity. And if we look at the agricultural productivity per agricultural worker in the region, it's been relatively flat for the past few decades, as indicated here in this graph. So there's a lot of potential to work with farmers to improve productivity, for example, to adopt new practices, looking at sustainability. Also, when we're thinking about investment in the private sector, it's important to acknowledge the role that urban centres and rural urban centres, which in many cases are the fastest growing urban areas in the region, play in terms of making investment in the farm sector. And also linked to that, the role that trade can play in terms of building and growing the sector in more sustainable directions, and the possibility for the interests of multinational agribusinesses and also consumers in driving changes in sustainability. And if we look at farmers in the region, they are well integrated in many cases with a number of commodities into international value chains. So there is an opportunity here to look at the potential for trends in consumption for businesses who are interested in sustainability to drive positive change in terms of net zero targets and increasing the sustainability of the food system. I think also when we're talking about the potential for increasing human capacity as a way to drive more sustainable production, at the regional level, there has been a lot of capital injection into the farm sector in terms of increased mechanization, and now also the potential to integrate greater use of ICT and technology in on-farm production efforts. Also, not only in terms of strengthening the capacity of farmers, there's also still quite a bit to be done in terms of strengthening research and development, both public and private, to address key sustainability challenges. We also need to think in the future about how changes in consumer preferences, dietary preferences are shaping sustainability outcomes in the food system, including increased emissions. And what we are seeing is that there has been a nutrition transition in the region over the past few decades, and that there are shifts towards, dietary shifts towards foods that can be more resource intensive and could have implications for environmental outcomes such as greenhouse gas emissions, but also other outcomes in the food system, such as health, including poor nutrition and micronutrient deficiencies. Now, what this adds up to is progress, yes, in terms of addressing food insecurity, but also a number of other concerning potential issues coming from the food system. This is compounded by the potential environmental impacts of the food system, which include water stress, environmental degradation and loss of key biodiversity across the region, pollution, including greenhouse gas emissions, as I have mentioned, also increased vulnerability and risk from future and current climate change. And as we have seen recently, it can, the way that the food system is managed can also be a source of weakness in the case of particularly large exogenous shocks, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And the way that countries respond to that can create significant issues for the system at large. Looking ahead, I'll finish talking about the potential of agriculture and land use as a basis for a net zero transformation. I think on that front, the region has, and this mirrors global trends, there is a lot of potential to build on work in agriculture to transition to more sustainable practice as the basis for a net zero transformation. If you look at the global level and at the regional level, there has been a reduction in harmful land use change, for example, expansion into forested lands and greater focus on agricultural intensification. That creates additional, I should not say additional, but new issues in terms of the intensification of agriculture and the use of inputs, for example. But we need to acknowledge that in the context of a net zero transformation, that there is a lot of potential in the agricultural sector, to harness its potential as a carbon sink and a store of natural capital. And to finish, it's worth highlighting that a number of initiatives undertaken by FAO in partnership with other agencies in the private sector are important ways to promote a transition to net zero transformation. Public-private partnerships to promote climate-smart agriculture, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, improving transparency, the data systems that Gita had mentioned, to understand how we are transitioning to more sustainable practices, working with local governments and communities through jurisdictional sustainability plans to reduce emissions and biodiversity loss, restoring agroecosystem services, addressing things like food loss and waste, and transferring knowledge and technology to farmers through digital means. So there is a lot to be done, but we are already making progress. And I think that there is a lot of potential here in Thailand and the region to realize a net zero future. So thanks, Gita.
Thank you, Bo, and thank you for setting out providing a very comprehensive overview of the food system in Southeast Asia. And it's interesting to note that Southeast Asia mirrors the global trend. And the fact that you're saying that Southeast Asia needs to, strengthen ICT, improve productivity, and with agricultural intensification and intensive inputs, find sustainable ways of production in the longer term, while obviously investing in capacities around data, the local community, and addressing issues around food waste and biodiversity. So thank you, Bo. Let's move on now to our second speaker. I would like to invite Dr. KOLLAWAT, Director of the Climate Change Management and Coordination Division of Thailand's Office of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy and Planning. Please tell us about the climate policy scenario in Thailand and what it means for the food and agricultural sector. Over to you, Dr. KOLLAWAT.
Thank you so much, Gita. And I would like to make some minor correction. I'm just the director of the Thailand UNFCCC National Focal Point Section under the Climate Change Management and Coordination Division. Thank you. So good day to you all. On behalf of the ONEP Thailand, I would like to convey the ONEP SG, Dr. Viwan Puridet, appreciation to the CP Group for extending an invitation to ONEP to take part in this important international event of the UN Global Compact Leader Summit 2021. We recognize this urgency and crucial moment as we are trying to keep the momentum of the climate action going forward, despite the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Only all of us jointly work together could we successfully tackle the climate change issues. So let me start by sharing with you the role of Thailand on climate change in three scales: the international collaboration, the national policy, and implication of food and agriculture sector, respectively. For our international collaboration, Thailand fully recognizes the need to respond to the climate change issues. We have joined the global effort to slow down, if not cease, the pace of the rising global temperature, as well as contributing our efforts to the work of climate change adaptation. As a member state of the UNFCCC, Thailand has ratified the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement consequently. These are to show that Thailand stands firmly to collaborate with other countries to transform the agreement to actions and implementation. Commonly perceived, climate change always has twofold: the adaptation and mitigation. In the modern era of the international arenas of the climate negotiation, efforts have been put to make sure that attention and resources would be expedited in a balanced manner between the work on GST mitigation and the adaptation to the negative consequence of the climate change. Under the UNFCCC negotiation agendas, Coronavirus Joint Work on Agriculture, KJWA, confirms that adaptation and mitigation benefits of work on climate change actions could coexist. Thailand, as one of the developing countries, has always supported this movement. We exhibit our equal emphasis on adaptation and mitigation in our first NDC and the update one, aiming to reduce 20 to 25% of GSG mitigation by 2030, as well as to improve adaptive capacity and increase climate resilience of the country. At the same time, as a member of ASEAN, Thailand has been actively working with ASEAN member states to strengthen climate actions for the region. Through the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, UNGC, we are a leading countries in climate change adaptation. In 2019, the year Thailand was an ASEAN chair, we initiate a workshop identifying common risks and build resilience through sharing good practices and experience among AMS. We will continue to work closely with neighboring countries to enhance adaptive capacity and increase climate resilience of the region. For national policy, Thailand has prioritized climate change issue as one of the top national agendas. Climate Change Master Plan 2015 to 2050 serves as a keystone of the country, providing a long-term framework to guide climate change policy and strategies of the nation in three key pillars: the adaptation, the GSG mitigation, and enabling environment. Under the master plan, agriculture has played an important role in both adaptation and mitigation. Contents of the master plan has been integrated in 20 years national strategy, serving as the framework to guide Thailand's sustainable development pathway and ensure the continuity of the long-term development priorities, as well as the 12th National Economic and Social Development Plan, providing direction and measure of the country's development. Following the master plan, the NAP, National Adaptation Plan, was created to be guidelines of adaptation actions. The NAP identified area-based risk and vulnerability of the country, as well as providing a basis for adaptation action in 6 priority sectors, where agriculture and food security issues is recognized as one key sector. ONEP has worked with key agencies such as Office of Agricultural Economy and Department of Agriculture to make sure that national policy and plan has been smoothly transferred to sectoral actions and implementation. For the sectoral implementation, we fully recognize how much vulnerable in agricultural sector we are to the impact of the climate change. Unpredictable climate such as frequency of drought, flood, extreme precipitation, and salinity intrusion affect farmers, which account for more than 25% of our national population. At the same time, appropriate agricultural practices could also minimize CSG mitigation. With strong commitment of the OEA, the Agricultural Adaptation Plan, or NAP Act, was initiated. This plan has been built around the concept of sufficiency economy philosophy in accordance with ecosystem and community-based adaptation. Recognizing strengthening community from grassroots will fortify the resiliencies of the whole society sustainably. The goal of NAP Act is to sustain country capacity in food production and security. Priority of this plan are strengthening adaptation in the climate change strategic plan, strengthening performance-based monitoring and assessment, assessing climate change vulnerability and variability, and building capacity for farmers. Let me share with you further on good practices of international support projects. Thai Rice Nama and Scala as a good example of projects exhibiting co-benefit between adaptation and mitigations, with funding support from the NAMA facilities and IKI global cooperation respectively. The other good example is climate smart agricultural project. With the main focus on food security by climate smart agriculture practice, the project contributes to the climate change adaptation while extends co-benefit to the GSG mitigation in agricultural sector. My last point of the talk, I'd like to reiterate and recognize that international collaborations are crucial for our work on climate change, especially on agricultural sector. These supports have been greatly significant to enhance our adaptation actions domestically, which in turn contribute to the success of the international level. As I mentioned earlier, Thailand stands ready to work with all partners in this area to reach the goal of the convention and its Paris Agreement. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. KOLLAWAT, and thank you for setting out Thailand's policy action and framework for keeping the momentum of climate action while prioritizing adaptation and mitigation. What caught my attention are the 3 things that you said around agriculture: the focus on climate smart agriculture, the sufficiency economy philosophy on which it is premised, and the need for international cooperation and collaboration to address this agenda. So thank you very much, Dr. KOLLAWAT. We now turn to another Thai agency, the Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, or TGO. As Executive Director, Mr. KIATCHAI leads TGO's role as the key support agency driving greenhouse gas mitigation in Thailand towards low carbon society and economy. Over to you, Mr. KIATCHAI.
Thank you very much, Gita. On behalf of TGO, Thailand Greenhouse Gas Management Organization, we are public organization. We work together with ONEP, its national focal points for climate action. In general, TGO acts as the key promoter, enhancing public-private sector mitigation action as a project base. We try to promote or to create small project, big project, actually developed by private and publics, including the city base as well. I consider that the food and agriculture sector is a key and have very high potential to reduce the greenhouse gas some more. Even though in case of our greenhouse gas management, we always have the energy sector project. Still not much for the project conducted systematically through food and agriculture business. Anyway, that means it's very potential to make it more. That means I think it's a huge transformation if occur for the whole supply chain for the food and agriculture things. I think is the first one that we should start is to reset the product specification. So the product specification for the whole chain, it should be its lowest carbon intensity. That should be organized we have for the green products. The second one, for the feedstock preparation and selection, we should follow the guideline for bio-circular green concept to utilize more bio feedstock that is organic one. The third one, we talking about the optimization for the process of the green process, including the optimize of the waste and minimize the waste to utilize for the other product in the supply chains, or utilize its energy and do more recoveries of the biogas and biomasses that is a waste, especially for the food waste. So that kind of things. In case of our data, it's very difficult a bit for this sector to move on if we cannot align with the small farmer together with the large company involved. So that means it should be with a collaboration and start with the leadership to make them move on, because it's very, very concerned on the many stakeholders. So that is general point of mine. That means this sector can be involved more in the project base. Based on my data, on our services, TGO provide a service for carbon footprints for products. We found that for the food and beverage, we have the carbon footprints around 3,000, more than 3,000 items is comes to certify for carbon footprints. And based on this one, carbon footprints, it can be the things, it can understand that how much we emit for the carbon footprint for each product. Anyway, food and agriculture is still like a majority for the carbon footprints for the whole product we have. And this one is there's a big issue for EU, for let's say for the Green Deal. For the Green Deal now, it's talking about when we do exporting the product, and carbon intensity maybe is one of the things that is non-tariff barrier to have a tax in case of that we emit the carbon intensity more than EU one. So the carbon footprint is another tool that we have to focus and consider and try to use this one for see us how to improve our sales to match with the export requirement in EU. The third thing, we're talking about the project emission reduction carbon credit. I found that in my experience, the most project that acquires carbon credit mostly is biogas recoveries and related to the waste management. Sometimes it's waste management and recoveries like biogas recovery from swine farm. That means as for small farmers and the little companies, maybe some limited to recovery, not like the large company like CP Group. That is have a good management for reviews and recovery, all the things that they can optimize. So that means the project still there to have a potential to get the credit from many action for the recovery of the a biogas, let's say methane, as well as for the certain fertilizer. The fertilizer nitrous oxide is another issue that it can improve. We just developed the step-by-step, the methodology for improving and climate action for the agriculture and food business. Not like energy part that very advanced, but for agriculture thing is a bit late. So our TGO try to move on and try to make a service to speed up and try to cope with all the action and innovation and new innovation. Lastly, I feel that it needs to strengthen the public-private engagement more, to collaborate, especially for the framework to enhance the climate action in this sector. Especially we have a reforestation. We have reforestation project together with the agricultures that can merge together and make it cooperation. So recently we try to set up the network called Thailand Carbon Neutral Network. This network will be formulated in order to make the company have net emission in the carbon footprint, press himself to be net zero company by have an OPEC and try to set the net zero pathway by themselves. And this one will be exchanged with some company that have excessive credit. So both parties can do optimization for crediting, exchange the crediting to optimize the cost for the reduction. We plan also to open the exchange for the carbon credit let's say the carbon credit exchange market, that is not performed very well in Thailand now. So if we set up the collaboration for the Thailand carbon neutral network together with carbon market, it make the people to join can optimize their action. That is the one initiative that we try to make everybody to have incentive in economics to join and make the pledge with the glory, with the proud to be sustainability. So that is the idea that how the private sector and public can work together. Anyway, we need the support from the policy base to have incentive and clear view for the direction, and also how we can incorporate together with like a capacity building of platform. We plan to use the internal pricing methodology to embed to the system, as well as for the site-based target methodology that we can utilize for the whole member in a network. So on behalf of TGO, we think the food and agriculture section is open for opportunity for work together a lot. If we combine with the reforestation and agriculture together with food, it should be very good combination and come into the network. And this one can help to achieve the net zero carbon and net zero emission for Thailand target. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. KIATCHAI. And thank you for sharing with us the kind of examples of public and private sector partnerships that the TGO is investing in to reduce greenhouse gases. What I found very interesting was the biocircular model that you spoke of, and the fact that you're looking at that to optimize food waste, organic fish stock, and securing the supply chain. Very promising. And what is path-breaking specifically is the carbon credit exchange market that you are considering, along with the carbon neutral network. This is the future, pretty much the future. So thank you very much, Mr. KIATCHAI. Let's move on. We now turn to Mr. Henriksson from the Thai Rice Nationally Appropriate Mitigation Action Program, or NAMA. You've been working in the agricultural sector on sustainable farming systems, climate change adaptation, and value chain development for 3 decades. And now you are leading the Thai Rice NAMA program here in Thailand. Could you please tell us what this program is about and what it aims to achieve? Over to you, Mr. Henriksson.
Yes, thank you very much, Gita, for this kind introduction. Let me start by just saying a few words about the NAMA facility. It was jointly established by the German and the British governments in connection with the climate negotiations in 2012 in Doha. And relatively soon afterwards, the Danish government and the European Commission also joined the initiative. The vision of the facility is to accelerate carbon neutral development by financing the implementation of national climate strategies and nationally determined contributions in developing and emerging economies. And let me also just give a few words of background to the Thai Rice NAMA. As mentioned earlier, in 2016, Thailand ratified the Paris Agreement and thereby officially committing to a nationally determined contribution. And in Thailand, the agricultural sector is the second biggest emitting sector after the energy sector. And rice actually accounts for almost 60% of all the emissions from the agricultural sector. And it's on this background that the Thai government, with assistance from GIZ, submitted a proposal for a Thai rice NAMA to the facility. It was approved in 2018, and the main partners of the program is the Ministry of Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives, especially the Rice Department. It's ONEP under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. It's the Bank of Agriculture and Agricultural Cooperatives under Ministry of Finance and GIZ. We have a lot of other partners, but these are the main partners. So the overall goal of the Thai Rice NAMA is to achieve a transformational change through a shift from conventional to low-emission sustainable rice farming. And it's a 5-year project. The budget is 14.9 million euro provided by the German and the British governments, of which 6.5 million is for technical assistance and 8.4 million is for financial cooperation. And this is, of course, integrated into the Thai government's in-kind contribution of 9.1. So the program consists of 3 components. The first one is focusing on production, where we support and assist farmers in the shift to low-emission rice farming through trainings and field demonstrations. And it's important to mention that these low-emission practices, or what we also call climate-smart best practices, not only reduces greenhouse gas reductions, but they also, let's say, improve, or they reduce production costs and thereby create an opportunity for farmers to increase their income. However, there are investment costs, and in order to support farmers in that regard, we have established a revolving fund under the financial cooperation where farmers, they can pre-finance these investments. The second component focuses on supporting entrepreneurs in providing farmers with the required mitigation services. It also includes support to access to BAAC's Green Loan Program, so that the service providers, they can finance the investments in these technologies. And then the third component focuses on policy development in order to create incentives for the adoption of low emission production, and of course also eventually to scale up these best practices at a national level. And let me say that we also have very strong partnerships with the private sector. This includes international rice trading companies such as Olam International, Mars Food, and EBRO. And that's in order to create a market for low emission sustainable rice, and of course to create market access for farmers. So what are these mitigation technologies? Well, we have focused on 4 key technologies, of which the first one, which is alternate wetting and drying, is the most important one. And simply put, it consists of draining the field 2 to 3 times during the cropping system, instead of having the rice field continuously flooded throughout the season. And with this simple practice, you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions with between 30% and in some cases all the way up to 70%. The second technology that we are promoting is laser land leveling, in order to get a very even and level rice field. And this increases the effect of the alternate wetting and drying. The 2 technologies together can reduce water use with typically around 40%, it also increases the efficiency of fertilizer application. The third technology that we are promoting, we call it site-specific nutrient management. And what it is, it's providing fertilizer in accordance with the specific soil conditions and the specific rice variety which the farmer grows. These technologies in combination can typically reduce fertilizer application with up to 20% compared to common conventional practice. And finally, we are identifying economically attractive alternatives to the very common and very detrimental practice of rice straw burning. So that is a very brief introduction to the Thai rice nama. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henriksson. You set out very comprehensively how Thai Rice Nama is supporting farmers to move and graduate towards low emission sustainable rice farming. And what I liked is the four-pronged approach that you set out through financing, linking farmers to entrepreneurs, creating policy incentives, and then transfer of mitigating technology. So very, very well, thank you for sharing that with us. Let's move on now to Mr. Verghese. Your company, Olam, has demonstrated strong sustainability leadership as a food and agribusiness, especially in the area of supply chain sustainability. I understand Olam operates in over 60 countries, delivering agricultural raw material and food ingredients to customers worldwide. Please tell us more about the technological solutions that you employ to support sustainable food and agriculture. Over to you, Mr. Verghese.
Thank you so much, Gita, and it's an absolute privilege to be one of the two private sector representatives in today's breakout session under the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit for 2021. I want to begin by saying something that is obvious. The global food and agricultural system is broken. As many of the speakers earlier said, we account for more than a third of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, including land use change and the impact of food waste. We draw 71% of all the world's freshwater resources, and yet we have a large proportion of the smallholder farmers who produce the food, feed, and fiber that we need, well below the poverty line definition of $1.90 per day. We have doubled the number of acutely poor, level C stage of food insecurity population in the world in the last year and a half as a result of COVID. So the global food and agricultural system needs to pivot and transform to becoming more sustainable. And therefore we need to achieve systems transformation in this regard. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which I have the privilege to chair, in March came out with its report, Vision 2050, Time to Transform. And of the 9 meta systems around the world which needs transformation to usher in a more sustainable world, one was clearly the food sector. And the vision for the food sector in this report is to build a regenerative and equitable food system where we can produce food that is safe, healthy, and nutritious for the 9.5 billion people that will inhabit this world by 2050. In order to achieve that ambition, we said there are 7 key transitions that we need to achieve, and there were 10 clear action steps that were laid out. Being from the private sector, we are action and practice biased. And if you see, the world has achieved over the course of the last decade 3 miraculous multilateral agreements. First was the Aichi Declaration, the UN Biodiversity Convention, which was announced in 2010. 198 countries signed up to it. We needed to achieve those 20 strategic goals by 2020. 2020 has come and gone, and we have achieved 4 out of the 20. We have achieved 20% of the goals that we set for ourselves. The UN SDGs was announced in 2015. It's a 15-year program. 2030, we need to achieve those 17 granular goals and 169 targets. The UN SSDN says that 5 years into this program, we are nowhere in the trajectory of achieving those goals. And then we had another miraculous achievement in terms of the UN Paris Accord, Climate Accord in 2015. Again, 194 countries have signed up to it. But given our current trajectory, we are going to enter a potential hothouse Earth scenario. And instead of limiting global warming to under 2 degrees centigrade, is likely to be global warming of 4 or 4.5 degrees centigrade, which is really a hothouse Earth scenario. So why is it that despite all of this commitment and collective will of 195, 198 countries around the world, making these bold pronouncements and visions, we are nowhere in the trajectory of achieving them? Why is there such a massive action gap? And that is because translating these bold ambitions and big targets and policies into real granular action, practice, biased action on the ground that can change things hasn't happened at the pace that we need for truly transforming our world into becoming more sustainable. So in this context, I just want to talk about two practical, game-changing sustainability and digital innovations that my company has implemented to transform the global food and ag sector, including our role in it. Our purpose as a company is to reimagine global food and agricultural systems, which means how do we find ways to provide food, feed, and fiber a global population, a growing global population needs by 2050 without destroying the planet. So we have developed a sustainability framework called @Source, which today tracks 340 key sustainability metrics across 10 major sustainability topics, including the first mile granular traceability to the farm or the farm gate, and all the way to the fork or the pallet of our customers. And within these 10 key sustainability topics, using technology, digital technology, everything from first mile data collection at the farmer level to all through the various steps in the value chain, and making sure that we can provide climate positive, nature positive, and livelihood positive food raw materials and ingredients, which is fully sustainability sourced and with granular traceability to our customers. This cannot be done without geotagging farmers, without using digital technology, and being able to measure impact, and then have external assurance of vetting and validating the claims that we make on these sustainability metrics. Based on the success of this over the last 2.5 years, we have decided now to externalize this offering and make it open source. And as we speak, we are having a co-creation workshop of about 12 folks from the supply side, from the consumer, from the brand owner side, from the retail side, and NGO, civil society coming together to co-create this sustainability reference platform for the food and agricultural sector. I got only 8 seconds left, so I just want to very briefly mention one more thing that we are doing, which is a farmer services platform called Jiva. We have developed an AI-based, machine learning-based crop care nudge brain, an agronomy nudge brain, based on 52 production variables. And we are offering our farmers, smallholder farmers, daily nudges on the next best action that he or she can take on their farm to maximize productivity, yields, and have a step-out change in their livelihoods and incomes. And this is only possible as a result of twinning the two engines of digital and sustainability to make a meaningful impact in catalyzing farmer livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varghese. And thank you for reminding all of us of the global commitments and the action gap. Your two practical digital solutions. The first one, which is now going open source, so many congratulations for that. And it's nice to know that you're linking farmers using geo-tracking right up to the retailers and the customer. So the entire chain gets mapped. And secondly, your daily nudge to farmers for enhancing sustainable production. It's a brilliant idea. And I'm sure it's going to be, it's something that many others would want to scale up. So let's move on from here to a final speaker in this session. And that is Mr. Noppandawn from the CP Group. As the Chief Sustainability Officer, you oversee the CP Group's sustainability policy and help to foster innovation and ensure sustainable business practices across the company's operations and supply chain. Can you please share with us what is CP Group doing to pursue its net zero goal? Over to you, Mr. Noppandan.
Thank you very much, Kun Gita, for your question, and thanks all the speakers. We at CP Group are deeply honored by your presence and participation in this breakout session. My name is Noppandan Dejudom, and it's my privilege to serve as the Chief Sustainability Officer for CP Group. Our company was founded a century ago in 1921 as a vegetable seed business in Bangkok's Chinatown. From there, we expanded to include animal feed, farming, food processing, and so forth. Our root is in food and agriculture. But we also have other key businesses such as retail, telecommunications, digital media, real estate, and others, for a total of 14 business units operating in 21 countries. I am referring to these non-agricultural parts of our organization because in addition to talking about emissions from the agriculture sector, I think we need to look at food system as a whole. And to achieve net zero emissions within the food value chain, we need all possible solutions from these sectors. CP Group's total Scope 1 and 2 emissions for 2019 was 5.4 million tons of CO2 equivalent, and 60% of that comes from our food and agriculture businesses. We also know that it is Scope 3 emissions that are the main challenges. Scope 3 emissions, especially upstream emissions from our farmers, account for more than 80% of the total food value chain emissions. So in order to get close to net zero, we need to work closely with farmers and other upstream suppliers. Our strategies follow the three approaches of the climate smart agriculture framework. This includes raising productivity, strengthening resilience, and implementing mitigation measures. First, on productivities, we have been developing and improving breed of crops and animals, as well as production processes and farming techniques, leading to better eco-efficiency of our products for the past few decades. For example, corn, shrimp, pork, and chicken. One example is our hydrophone system that listens to the sound of shrimps eating, coupled with underwater cameras to determine exactly how much feed the shrimps need so that we can reduce waste and pollution and boost productivity at the same time. Reducing food waste is also important in terms of maintaining productivity and efficiency. For example, maintaining high standard of animal welfare throughout their life stages is not only the right thing to do morally, but makes sense economically and environmentally. With good animal welfare practice, we have been able to reduce animal fatality and illness so that we can get more end products with the same amount of resources. Second, in terms of resilience, we're developing several technology solutions that will help farmers address the challenges of climate change, reducing waste and increasing efficiency. Through corporations development based on the new 5G network, including such solutions as digital livestock monitoring, water quality management, and agriculture drones. These technologies can be shared with our partner farmers as well as serve our own operations. Another example from our shrimp farms is the closed loop water recycling system that has cut down water usage per kilogram of products by 86% and reduced energy consumption in the water treatment system by 30 to 35%. And third, mitigation. We have long been a major proponent of biogas system of our swine farms, and nearly 96% of our partner farms in Thailand, as well as many egg production facilities and food processing plants generate energy from biogas, cutting down harmful methane emission and reducing consumption of grid electricity and fossil fuels. We have expanded the development of biogas system to our operations in other countries, especially here in ASEAN, such as Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, and the Philippines and Vietnam. We also have rooftop solar and utilize biomass fuels at many of our facilities. We plan to eliminate all of the coal in our food processing plants in Thailand by next year. As of 2019, renewable energy accounted for almost 12% of our total energy consumption, saving 600,000 tons of CO2 emission per year. But 12% is still very small, and we will expand much more. In Thailand, we have about 60 megawatts of installed solar capacity. We want to increase this figure by nearly 100 times within the next decade to 5,000 megawatts. So we need partners to help us speed up our renewable energy program. Another mitigation example is the reformulation of animal feed products to reduce the nitrogen content in the manure, which will lead to lower nitrous oxide emission by more than 100,000 tons CO2 equivalent per year. Undertaking this approach with the appropriate technologies as a catalyst for change will help lowering emissions, but to really drive down to net zero, we will need to ramp up our carbon sequestration efforts. We are pursuing tree planting projects, starting in Thailand and China and expanding to other countries where we operate. To reach net zero, we need to plant nearly 100 million trees by 2030. This may sound a big number, but if you consider that we have more than 400,000 employees, each employee would need to plant only 25 trees per year. These are some of our initiatives we have implemented and will continue to expand to meet our net zero goal. Thank you very much, Gita, again.
Thank you, Mr. Nopadon. A very, very impressive and a wide range of strategies that you are adopting as part of the CP group to obviously improve productivity for crops and livestock. And the three that I like the most, because I'm new to this field, the first was the hydrophone system for shrimp farming, for shrimp feeding. Very interesting. And the way that you are recycling, you know, the water recycling system that you've set up, including the biogas farms that you have set up to reduce consumption of fossil fuels and scaling up of renewable energies, and not just in Thailand, but across all your operations globally. And finally, the tree plantation, which is such a simple thing that all of us, each of us could be doing in our own little plots of land that we have. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So let me thank all the panelists for the invaluable discussion today and for bringing together these different perspectives, with special thanks to the CP group for hosting this event. We've heard from these 6 speakers representing a very diverse set of players in the food and agriculture and the climate change arena. I believe it's clear from the discussion today that the way we produce and consume food and other agricultural products needs to be transformed towards a more sustainable path. So thank you to all the participants and viewers from around the world and across all sectors for your kind attention. Good evening.